Hi guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my massive unhaul. Oh my god, where do I actually start? What do I grab? We've got so much here. Like, what do I start with? I'm getting rid of all of my Sophie Kinsella books. I have quite the collection of hers. I have a very fond memory of reading Sophie Kinsella when I was on holiday. I think it was the first holiday I went on when I finished high school, and I went with two of my really close girlfriends and we went to Thailand. I picked up this book first because it's set on a plane, and I love when I go away to try and match the books I want to read with the setting. I just thought it would be fun at this time to read a book that starts off on a plane as I'm taking off on a plane myself. I read this, loved it so much that when I was in Thailand, I found a bookshop that sold like the rest of these, and I would go there every couple of days and buy one of these books, and then I was just reading them by the pool or the beach. So Sophie Kinsella just reminds me of Thailand. I don't see myself ever rereading these. They're that fun beach read I'm just never gonna pick up again. My favorite celebrity as a kid was Hilary Duff, and Lizzie McGuire was like my favorite TV show. So I have, still from childhood, all these Lizzie McGuire books. Loved her, still love Hilary Duff to this day. I also have her YA, I think this is like a fantasy series. I never read it. I got this, I saw it was Hilary Duff, I was excited, never picked these up. I don't think I'm going to. The Uglies books by Scott Westerfield, they can go. I did really enjoy these. These are dystopian books that I read back when I was a teenager. I think they were very relevant for the time I read them, and I felt like I got a lot out of them. Won't ever read these again, but I'm still interested in reading more Scott Westerfield. I will say I haven't read anything else by him. I've meant to since I've read these, but it hasn't happened. But something I love about all the books I read during my teen years is I went through phases. So when I read a dystopian book and I fell in love with that dystopian book, I would go out and buy every other dystopian book I could find, and the same with the vampires, the same with the angels, and whatever else I was obsessed with. These are some vampire ones that I feel like a classic, and that is the Blue Bloods series. I actually didn't like this series though, and I kept reading it. I don't think I read these last two here, but these three I did. I remember the way the vampires worked and were reincarnated was really weird, and I did not vibe with. Yeah. I had a fairy phase, but I never fell in love with fairy or fae books. Till this day, I really haven't, unfortunately. Wicked Lovely. I own the entire series. I've only read the first book. I've read it twice. I've tried to read it twice to continue on, and I never have. I'm never going to. I did not like this, and I bought the whole series. I'm pretty sure I got most of the rest of the books at a discount bookshop. You know, one of those like discount bookshops where you can find books for like $2, like an outlet. I have some Hannah Rochelle books. I have a very vivid memory of reading this right towards the end of year 12. My friend told me to read this, and I read this on her recommendation. Then I got told off by my friends for focusing on reading and not studying. I really actually enjoyed this one. It's about a family that have sort of broken up and aren't in contact with one another, and you know that some kind of tragedy did happen many years ago, and it's a story that switches between like past and present, so you eventually put the pieces together on what happens. And the main character is one of the sisters, and she's currently pregnant, so she's starting her family and she's sort of reflecting on what happened to her own family. I thought it was a very captivating read, and then I picked this up when it came out because I really enjoyed this by the same author. I did not like this one at all. I did not like the characters in this one. They were very questionable. I am also getting rid of the Darkest Mind trilogy by Alexander Bracken. Can we just take a moment to take in this cover? Like, what is actually with this cover? It does not look like a traditionally published book by HarperCollins. What were they thinking? What was the thought process here? I actually loved this trilogy. I read it back when I was in school and it was one of my favorites at the time. In this dystopian world, kids get powers and they're very dangerous, and so they're put into like camps. I just thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed it, but I'm not going to reread it. Do we all remember this series? Anna and the French Kiss, Lola and the Boy Next Door, and Isla and the Happily Ever After. I read this. I actually loved them back in the day. It was fun for its time. I'm glad I read it. It's such a, like, I think iconic YA romance series trilogy. I'm getting rid of the two Leanne Moriarty books I own. So I own The Husband's Secret and I also own Big Little Lies, which I love both of these. I think I might slightly prefer The Husband's Secret, which I think might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but these are a lot of fun. I'm just never going to reread them. I know a lot of people who I think would be interested in owning them. I'm getting rid of all these Matthew Riley books that I own. Matthew Riley is an Australian author who I was obsessed with when I was probably around 14 to 15 years old. He writes very much stories that are like Indiana Jones. My favorite book of his though is actually Hover Car Racer, which is literally just about hover car racing set in this futuristic setting. I have a very distinct memory of reading this when my friend came over and she did not have The Sims at home and she wasn't allowed to buy The Sims. So she came over, spent the whole day playing on my computer to play Sims, and I just sat in the bed and read this. Like, that was our friendship. And I do think I might go back eventually and finish off this series, which is 7 Ancient Wonders, because I loved this as well. This is very Indiana Jones and there's a lot to do with history that's included in this, which I thought was so fun. But he's only recently finished this series in recent years. He took quite a bit of a hiatus from writing it. I would like to finish it, but I think I can just easily get these out from the library. I'm getting rid of the Philippa Gregory books I have on my shelves. I have The Ella Boleyn Girl, I have Three Sisters, Three Queens, and I have The Other Queen. I haven't read any of these. I always told myself I was going to get to them one day. I loved the TV shows, particularly The White Queen. That was like one of my favorite TV shows, and I grabbed all these books over the years when I found them in charity shops or secondhand bookshops. I just haven't gotten to them and I'm not going to. There's a lot of them. If I want to pick them up, I can see me picking them up on audio anyway. I don't need to own them. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This book I read, I felt quite average on. Beautiful writing, just very long and very toxic, this book. It's basically about this guy who just really goes downhill. He just continues to make poor decision after poor decision, and the decisions get worse as they go. Very uncomfortable reading this, like very interesting, a very fascinating read, but also very uncomfortable and tragic. I have a couple Nicholas Sparks books here. I've got The Last Song, which I did really like, and I've got The Choice. Read them both. I read a few other Nicholas Sparks, but I own them on my Kindle. Oh, I don't have a Kindle anymore, RIP to my Kindle, but they were on my Kindle. Are we ready? We're going to talk about my biggest book buying regret. Like, if I could go back to a point in time and slap some sense into past Nicole, into young Nicole, this would be that moment, because I regret buying these books so much. Okay, little reveal. They're just here. The entire Outland series I brought in hardback. These were expensive and I brought every single one of them before I'd even read book one. Let me explain and defend Past Nicole a little bit. I started watching the Outlander TV show and I watched only the first half of season 1. Only that first half was released and I was obsessed. I was like, this is going to be my new favorite thing. Oh my god, now I have to go read the books. So I read and bought all these books in hardback before I'd even read book 1, and then I realized I didn't like the books. They're so long. It makes for a beautiful TV show, but I just find these too long, too boring, nothing happens. I've read up until, I want to say, book 4. I'm not going to continue. I've always told myself I'm going to continue because I regret how much money I spent on all these books. It's time to let go. It's time to just like not hold on to them just because of the price tag I paid. We're just going to learn from that mistake. Glad I got that out of the way. Can we see the dent? Just this dent in my couch right now. Do we see that? Is that gonna come back up, or have I fucked this couch for good? Okay, I think it's starting to get a little bit more of its pookiness back when I really hope this couch is not permanently damaged from these books. That's gonna be a whole nother issue I'm gonna have to solve. This one was kind of another mistake, but I found this really cheap. I think I found it for $10. At this time, I hadn't read this series, but I kind of wanted to get into it. I thought I wanted to own the books in hardback. This is Victoria Aveyard's Warstorm. Did I say that weird? I feel like I said that weird. I don't know what book in the series it is. Is it book 3? I want to say it's book 3. Oh, it's the final book. So that's, I think it's book 3? Or is there 4 books in the series? Like, why do I own this? I don't own the rest of the series. I don't want to go out and buy the rest of the series. So we're just going to get rid of this. Silly Nicole again. Battle Royale. I read this. I enjoyed it. This is a Hunger Games scenario kind of book, and there's a whole group of class students who find themselves on this island where they have to kill each other's classmates. I thought it was a very well-paced book in terms of like what was happening and the action sequences, but yeah, won't reread. I have Room. I did read this. I think this is one of those books I actually listened to the audiobook of, and then I found this book in a charity shop for $1. Still got the price tag on it. And I was like, I want to own it because I've read the audiobook, and there was a time in my life where I did want to own every single book I'd read, but I don't need to do that. I have this, The Dragon's Journey. It's about a Vietnamese man who moved from Vietnam to Sydney and lives there. It's a memoir. I've learned with non-fiction that I prefer not physically reading them, that I like to audiobook them or listen to the audiobook of them. So that's how I would read this if I was to ever pick this up. I'm not sure if I will. I know I got this in a charity shop, and at the time it sounded interesting, but also I just had a very bad habit in the past of picking up almost anything from the charity shop. Like, I kind of had a problem. I just liked buying things. We've got 12 Rules for Life by Jordan B. Peterson. This book is so damaged. I have a very bad habit of putting tea on my books, like to rest. And so half my books have like tea stains, and this one I think I dropped in a bath. This book I started reading when I was depressed because a lot of people recommend this book when you're depressed. I think it does tell you some things you need to hear maybe when you're in a rut, but I don't think I like Jordan B. Peterson. I've seen a lot of things about him. I don't agree with a lot of his opinions. I don't want to own this. I never finished this book. I think I've got the bookmark in it somewhere. That's how much I read. We're not going to read anymore. I've got The Luminaries. I just know that this is set in New Zealand, and it is a book I wanted to read because it won the Man Booker one year. I used to want to read the Man Booker books, but I don't really know if I do anymore. I have this book that I grabbed from the charity shop because it sounded interesting. It is a collection of science fiction short stories. I got this at the time, I think, to find more authors to be interested in. But the thing is, I don't like short stories. I've probably only ever liked like one short story. I don't think I'm gonna like this. Okay, does anyone remember these books? The Fifth Wave and The Infinite Sea. Did I read the last book? Yeah, I think I read it on audio, but maybe I didn't. Anyway, I really enjoyed the 5th season. I did not enjoy the 5th season. The Fifth Wave. I really enjoyed the Fifth Wave. I did not enjoy the sequel. I'm also getting rid of the Sarah Dessen books I own. Of the 3 I own, I've only read Just Listen. It was fine. I found these in charity shops. Thought I'd like to give her another go, but no. I also have these couple of books from my childhood, which I don't think I've read this one. I think I've read this one, and I've read the first one. It's basically a mermaid series. I don't know what happened to book 1. I know I owned it once upon a time, but she no longer. Yeah. Does anyone remember this? I feel like this book, and there's a sequel as well by Huntley Fitzpatrick. This is My Life Next Door. Had a moment. Like, back if you were a Tumblr girly. Coho fans, please look away because I am getting rid of the 4 Colleen Hoover books I own. Fun fact, I was like an OG Colleen Hoover reader. I read Slam and Point of Retreat before Colleen Hoover was traditionally published. Her books used to only be available as ebooks, and I read them on my Kindle. I did really like this. This used to be a favorite. I loved it, which is very questionable because I think I read it when I was like 15, and it is about a romance between a student and a teacher. So I brought these when she got them published traditionally. And then like years later, I was like, I want to try her again. Like, especially when I discovered BookTube and she was like quite popular. Like, she's always had her popularity. So I read Ugly Love, and then I read Maybe Sunday. One of the first books I brought because of BookTube when I first started my channel was this book, Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This is very heavily inspired by the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, but I just did not like this. I also have this Emily Rodda collection that I'm getting rid of, which is Rowan of Wind, which I haven't read. I used to read a little bit of Emily Rodda as a child. She's a very popular child author here if you were like raised in the 2000s in Australia. I've owned it for years, found it in a charity shop, thought I would like it, but I haven't tried it. We're at the end of another pile, which is very exciting, and at the end of that pile is this Aragon series. I've only read, I think, Aragon. I don't think I actually continued on with the rest of them, but I own the rest of them. Oh my god, we can actually see the back of the couch now. We're making progress. I have all these books here by this guy called Tom Lloyd. I don't know what happened, but they're quite damaged. I got these because I thought they were pretty, and I knew he wrote fantasy, and I was like, this could be a cool moment to find a new fantasy author, but I'm just not interested. I also don't like these editions anymore. Like I said, they're quite damaged, but they're heavy. So if I'm ever going to pick this Tom Lloyd up, it will not be these. Oh my god, look at this old movie cover, Beastly by Alex Finn. This is a Beauty and the Beast modern day retelling. I got this because I did think I liked the movie. I used to love Alex. I'm not going to say his name because every time I try to pronounce it, it comes out like pedophile. So we're just going to avoid that. But yeah, I didn't really like this one. Stormfront by Ginger Butcher. I hated this. I absolutely hated this. The misogyny is unreal, unparalleled. I originally picked this up because I was going to do a whole like essay video on misogyny and fantasy and like the way men write women, and I never did it, but I read this for it. I have Wicked by Gregory Maguire. Loved the musical, did not like the book. I picked this book up back when I was a teenager because it was compared to The Hunger Games by MTV, which like, that was very bold of me to trust them with a book recommendation. Like, what was I thinking? But it did work out well because I loved this first book. It is very Hunger Games-esque, but it's set in a desert setting, and this girl's twin brother goes missing. He doesn't go missing, he gets captured and taken away, and then she kind of travels the desert with her younger sister to go and bring him back, and there's like worms, I think, that are in the desert sand. Am I thinking the right book? I hope this is right. But I love the way it was told because it's told in a way there's no speech bracket. I just thought it was very captivating and I really liked it, but then I did not like the follow-up 2 books, unfortunately. I have not tried anything else by Maura Young, but maybe I need to look into what she's been up to these days. I also have this gorgeous edition of Anne of Green Gables that I'm getting rid of. I'm really hoping that I have someone that will take this because it's so pretty. And I read it and I enjoyed it, but I don't think I will reread it. Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. I read this. I can't remember what I thought of it. The Time Traveler's Wife. I did read this. I didn't like it. I just was very uncomfortable by the fact that the protagonist meets her love interest when she's a child. She's a literal child and she meets him for the first time. Obviously, like, timeline is all over the place in this because it is about time traveling, but that just made me very uncomfortable. What Was Lost by Kathleen O'Flynn, a book I just picked up when I saw her in a charity shop. No idea what it's about. It's hard with some of these because I haven't heard anything about them that makes me interested, but I'm also just like overwhelmed by the number of books I am interested and do want to read that I don't even want to make myself interested in this. So like, I guess I'm getting rid of this because I haven't heard anything about it, but also it's not fantasy. So if it was like a fantasy book, I would put more effort into finding out what this was about. So who knows what this is. One Day by David Nichols. I did read this. I did like this. I am a sucker for a tragic love story. I also really like the movie. I think I preferred the movie. I can't remember. I've got a couple of A.S. King books here. I have Gloria O'Brien's History of the Future and then Ask the Passengers. I enjoyed both when I read them. I haven't read any A.S. King in years since I read these, so I have no idea what I would think of her books today. Fallen Kingdom series, which was dubbed the YA Game of Thrones. I don't know who dubbed it that. They were really trying to market it. I enjoyed this, but I won't ever reread. I have Let the Sky Fall by Shannon Messenger, who wrote the Keeper of the Lost Cities series that I really adore. This was actually the first book I ever read by her. I read it back when I was a teenager and I actually distinctly remember not liking it, which is interesting because I wasn't much of a critical reader. There wasn't much I disliked often, so the fact that I thought that back then makes me judge this book probably harder than I should. I went through a bit of a Kirsten White phase once. So I've got her duology, Mind Games and Perfect Lies. These were so fun. The first book in this trilogy is Paranormalcy and then it goes Supernaturally and the final is Endlessly. We follow a character who doesn't really know what she is, but she works for an agency that sort of governs the supernatural creatures and protects the humans against them and like helps that divide, something of the sorts. I love these. I loaned these out to friends because I love them so much. I used to have a real thing for the supernatural creatures coexisting with the humans and how that kind of worked in their interactions. I thought was a lot of fun. I have All the Light We Cannot See, which I started and I read 113 pages of, but I never finished. And I just don't think I'm going to. I'm not the biggest historical fiction reader, and when I do like to read it, I think I like to listen to the audiobook of them. This was so popular. It came out the year I was working in a bookshop, so I was very influenced that year by what was popular amongst, I was gonna say the commoners, but that's such a degrading way to put just regular people. Just like what regular book buyers buy and are interested in. I've got The Sky Is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. I read this and I didn't like it. I think when I read this, I think I was a bit immature in terms of my thinking and understanding of how grief can be so different for everyone and so individual, and I didn't really get that back then. And this book is about grief. Just the actions the character took, I just couldn't agree with. I wasn't understanding of what she was going through. So like, I feel like my opinion of this book has changed over the years in terms of, I think I thought about it quite harshly when I read it. There's room on the couch to sit now. This is amazing. Okay, I'm gonna squeeze in between all the books. Oh my god, this is a bit of a thumbnail moment. Stefan and Dove, another influence by BookTube, the BookTube hype, and I didn't like this. I wanted a fun witchy romance and I just got bored of witchy romance. Do we remember these books? The Angel Fall trilogy. I actually never read the last book. I loved the first one, I think. It's like an apocalyptic angel book. It was a fun time, but I just think I have moved past that time of my life. Okay, these books I really enjoy. This is Bridget Cameron's contemporary books. We have Letters to the Lost, and then we have More Than We Can Tell, which is a sequel, companion sequel. Then we have Call It What You Want, which was my favorite out of these three. I still really enjoy these and I recommend them if you want to read a YA contemporary. My thing is with a YA contemporary and with all the ones on this list, I read them and I just no desire to ever read them again. I'm going to pass these along. They can find a new home. Now I've got Bridget Cameron's fantasy books. I actually had no idea that I owned so many Bridget Cameron books. I have The Ark for a Heart So Fierce and Broken, which is book 2 in the Curse Breakers trilogy. I loved book 1, but book 2 and book 3 was a bit of a letdown. I don't know what to do with this book because I know you can't resell Ark, so I can't drop this off at a charity shop. Maybe I can drop it at one of those like little neighborhood libraries. These here are the first books I ever read by Bridget Cameron and I enjoyed them at the time. I read them when I was still in school. First book is called Storm. It's like an elemental magic series set in our world and each book is a companion book and it follows like a new love interest, and each of the love interests is a brother from this one family who have elemental magic. The Merrick boys are elementals. Hot, powerful, dangerous, marked for death. I have this gorgeous edition of The Hobbit, which I have read. I thought The Hobbit was fine. And then I have this collection of, I think, short stories that it says edited by Christopher Tolkien. So I don't think J.R.R. Tolkien had finished this before he died. I've learnt since purchasing these that with a lot of classic fantasy, I don't end up loving it, and that's okay. I'm gonna unhaul them because I know there's a lot of people that do love them. I have Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I did like this. Again, I don't foresee myself ever rereading this. I feel like a lot of people would be interested in reading it. That I know in my life, so I want to pass it along. A Man Called Uwe, unpopular opinion. I didn't really like this one. I do want to give more Frederick Bachman a go. I just have not gotten around to it. Then I have this, which is My Brilliant Career by Miles Franklin, which is a classic Australian novel, basically about this woman's life living in the bush. I read this for a lit class. Life of Pi. This, I can remember, took me so long to read. I was so determined to finish it. It was so dense. I read it when I was still in high school. This was probably a little bit out of my league, or a lot out of my league. I know I got this secondhand as well. So, back to the secondhand shop you go. Oh, we've got to talk about these books. I feel like I've never had the opportunity to talk about these on my channel. But this is... it's a demigod series. What are you called? Jennifer L. Armentrout's demigod series. Essentially, it takes place at this school where all these kids are like children of the gods, demigods. So it's like Percy Jackson, but it reminds me of Vampire Academy in terms of what's happening. I loved this series. I read pretty much all the books on my Kindle back in the day. These, I think, are the last two. Yeah, this is the last one. This is the second last one. I was going to, read these and then I was going to eventually buy the collection, but I've never read these. And I've just come to this point in my life where I don't think I am. Am I? Oh, now I'm having second thoughts. Now I kind of want to go back and reread these. Because the thing is, okay, if you've read Vampire Academy, my favorite love interest of Rose was always Adrian. And the love interest in this series is literally an Adrian. So I used to be obsessed with this because I got the love interest I wanted. And now I'm thinking, maybe I will hang on to these. I don't own the rest of the series anymore though, so like what's the point? I'm really conflicted. So I'm getting rid of 2 of my Hunger Games books. I'm getting rid of Catching Fire and Mockingjay. I still own and plan to keep my Hunger Games book. And I have the original UK cover, which I love and I believe is actually quite rare to find these days. It's my favorite cover I've ever seen of the Hunger Games. I don't know what is wrong with publishers, but I think pretty much every cover of the Hunger Games are butchered. Like, these are just so boring. What were they thinking? I read the physical copy of my Hunger Games when I first read it, and then the rest of the series I read on my Kindle. So I brought these when I wanted to have the collection, the trilogy as a whole. I've actually never read these editions. Like, they are pristine, they are new, they are unread, and now they're getting unhauled. Okay, I'm getting rid of this series by Lynette Noni. I actually really like this series. The Akane series, this is book 1. It's about this girl who finds her way through a magical portal into a magical world, and there's like a magical school there. It's very much Keeper of the Lost Cities, the YA version. I loved it. It's a really fun group of friends. There's like adventures and quests, and there's like this evil coming back in the world that she's got to fight. I'm really hoping that some people in my life will take these books from me because I want them to find a new home to someone I know. Oh, did anyone else ever read these books? Oh, I don't have the cover for the first book. I lost the dust jacket, but this is the High Society series by Ali Carter. Literally about a group of thieves. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Did I finish the series? Was it only a trilogy? I can't remember. This is another series I wanted to love so bad, and this is the Iron King series by Julie Kagawa. Now, I even own the sequel series, one of the sequel series. I only read the first 2 books in the series, and then I didn't finish these 2, which is the final 2, and then this is the Lost Prince, which is the sequel. Oh, it follows the younger brother of the main character in this series. Okay, that makes sense. I should know what these are about. I mean, I haven't owned them for years and years, you know. I have all my Lauren Oliver books here to get rid of. There was a time where Lauren Oliver was a contender to be my favorite author. I just loved her writing. However, all of these books here that I own were never favorites. The only one that I ever considered a favorite was Before I Fall, which I have decided to keep because that book meant a lot to 17-year-old Nicole. I have We Were Liars, which I feel like has had a resurgence in popularity. I actually loved this book when I read it. I sobbed. Here, Skylark by Megan Bruner. I didn't really like this. It's another dystopian book that I read back when I was in that dystopian phase. It's like Attack on Titan sort of situation where all these people are enclosed in these walls and this girl like ventures outside. I don't remember anything else. I have this book, When God Was a Rabbit. This was actually one of the first books I ever reviewed on my channel, which I think is now private, the wrap up it was in. Wasn't a fan of this. I have Nelson Mandela's memoir. Like I said, memoirs, I like to listen to the audiobooks of them if I'm going to read them at all. Okay, I have Amanda Knox, Waiting to Be Heard. Another memoir, which I actually have read, and I did quite enjoy this one. It's basically about a girl who gets accused of murder while she's on an exchange in Italy, and the murder gained a lot of media attention. It's just kind of about that case and her journey to getting free. I have this book here, which I got from a secondhand bookshop, which is called Prisoner of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman. This book follows the niece of Hitler. I just don't want to read about the niece of Hitler, to be honest. I don't know why I brought it, but that's my opinion now. So yeah, I haven't read that one. I also have Patrick Rothfuss's The Slow Regard of Silent Things. This is a short novella that takes place in the, what is the world called? The Name of the Wind world? I don't know. This was just fine. I'm not going to reread it. I don't even love The Name of the Wind that much. I'm keeping it, in case you're wondering, but I could possibly get rid of it down the track. I really struggled to get rid of books I haven't read, but also I struggled to get rid of fantasy books, especially like series I haven't completed or are waiting to be complete or that are popular. I really had a hard time letting go of. Okay, I'm getting rid of my Chiyamana Noguchi Adichie books. 2 are the same book. I've only read this one, the short story collection. I have decided I'm going to break this video into parts, or my unhaul into parts. I'm exhausted now from what I talked about, and I still have all this to talk about, and the thought of it, it's too much. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed this video, leave me the shopping bag emoji. That's it for now. There'll be a lot more unhaul content coming.